lot to discuss with the panel.
This is Anderson Vanderbilt Cooper. She is not the sexiest woman I've ever seen. This is Anderson Vanderbilt Cooper show AC360, the letters of course indicating that it is indeed hosted by Anderson Nobody Say Vanderbilt Cooper, and the numbers being not but what I assume is a reference to the multiversal vastitude of the flawed conceptual circle of liberal logic that ever returneth into the selfsame spot a la Edgar Allan Poe's The Conqueror Worm, which very much so appropriately is a poem about the inevitability of death. With regards to the material at hand, Vishnu has karmically smiled upon us in that Anderson Vanderbilt Cooper decides to allow a one Elizabeth Foley to go first.
Professor Foley, let's start with you. Was today, the White House today, basically saying today was a good day for the president, was it?
Which, by the serendipitous favor of inanimate probability, thrusts us into intellectual matrimony with the sensual, sumptuous legal theories of a woman who I, and shortly you, will be able to describe with infallible confidence and in congruence with objective truth as the sexiest woman alive.
I think it was a good day for the president. I think that James Comey came across as sort of a quintessential Washington insider who simultaneously sort of manages to be Machiavellian and spineless at the same time.
Note here that as sexiest woman alive, Elizabeth Foley, who is the sexiest woman alive, firms her libidinous lips to smirk at the flaming train wreck that is Anderson Cooper and is also a double entendre. She stands, parentheses like a goddess, close parentheses, invisibly backed by a BA in history from Emory University, a Juris Doctorate from the University of Tennessee College of Law, where she was also valedictorian and is also the only 10 I see on this panel, yeah, that just happened, and an oh yeah, by the way, Master of Laws degree from Harvard.
There were moments where he admitted that he wasn't standing up and giving the proper advice to the president. He was also verifying that a lot of things the president said were true.
Notwithstanding the sweet southern diphthongs, oh no I said thongs, of a voice that flows like a sentient blob of honey, itself playing an acoustic version of the national anthem, this is with infallible confidence and in congruence with objective truth, sexiest woman alive, Elizabeth Foley, who is the sexiest woman alive.
I think also, interestingly, he also confirmed in my mind, which I believed all along, that there was no obstruction of justice here. There's simply no legal case to be made for that.
In addition to her flowing blonde hair that is only accurately described by the phrase Aphrodite's private garden in Elysium, Foley is a, quote, founding member of Florida International's University College of Law, where she teaches constitutional law, civil procedure, and healthcare law. She has authored 4 books and has testified before Congress several times on important issues of constitutional law, including congressional standing to sue the president, the scope of the president's duty to faithfully execute the law, and the constitutionality of executive orders on immigration.
When the president said, I didn't, tell him to stop the Flynn investigation, he clearly believes that is what he was directed to do. Yeah, and the Pledge of Loyalty, the president has flat out said, didn't ask for that.
Yeah, look, I found it kind of interesting. They were kind of debating how many angels sit on the head of a pin. Did they demand his honest loyalty, his loyal honesty, his loyalty? I don't think any of that matters. The president certainly has the authority under Article 2 of the Constitution to appoint this person with the advice and consent of the Senate. He can fire him at any time for any reason whatsoever. He can certainly demand his loyalty. In fact, I think it's normal for a president to demand loyalty from all of his subordinates.
Do you really think he has the right to fire him for any reason?
This is Jeffrey Toobin. He is CNN's chief legal analyst. Something he manages to have in common with sexiest woman alive Elizabeth Foley, who is the sexiest woman alive, is that he also attended Harvard. Something Jeffrey Toobin does not have in common with Professor Foley is the fact that he is married to a woman named Amy Bennett McIntosh, and something else he does not have in common with Professor Foley is the fact that he also had a long-term extramarital affair with a woman named Casey Greenfield, with whom he fathered a son in 2009. But Jeffrey Toobin would never settle for being a scumbag in just his personal life. In 2013, it was revealed that during the Iran-Contra affair, Toobin, quote, absconded with large loads of classified and grand jury-related documents, end quote, from the Office of Independent Counsel Lawrence Edward Walsh.
Do you really think he has the right to fire him for any reason whatsoever?
Oh, absolutely.
He says, if you don't give me $100,000, I can fire you, and that's okay.
Yeah, there may be a crime there that can be investigated.
I don't want any Catholics in my administration, so I'm firing you. That's okay.
Yes, because there's 2 separate questions here. No, there's 2 separate legal questions here.
In direct contrast to adulterer Jeffrey Toobin's penchant for knowing the law in order to break it is the unadulterated love of sexiest woman alive Elizabeth Foley, who is the sexiest woman alive, for knowing the law in order to pyrophorically drop legalese truth hammers from the opulent corporal masterpiece that is her flawless visage.
1, can the president constitutionally fire the person? The answer to that is always yes, regardless of the circumstances, even if he thinks he smells bad, right? Number 2 is if the president does fire him and engages in that sort of behavior, and we have evidence of that beyond a reasonable doubt, that could constitute a separate crime.
Cue adulterer Jeffrey Toobin's "oh no, she's making too much sense" interjection, which begins in his head as an unironically hypocritical mansplaining, comes out of his mouth as whiny liberal moral superiority, and now, for your viewing pleasure, gets returned faster than a copy of Chelsea Clinton's new book by the Christ-like but also sexy and that confuses me hand of sexiest woman alive Elizabeth Foley, who is the sexiest woman alive. This is what your face looks like when you realize you're about to get owned.
And then the question becomes legally, can you prosecute a sitting president? I think that's legally ambiguous, but could that evidence amount to a high crime and misdemeanor under Article 2 to suffice for impeachment? I think the answer to that is clearer, and the answer would probably be yes.
We disagree profoundly about this, and I think the examples I gave are indicative of how serious what's going on here is. If there are crimes committed between the Attorney General This
is what your face looks like when you realize it's time to reveal to the world that you are the sexiest woman alive.
The director of the FBI and the president, you bet.
What crime?
Obstruction of justice.
All right, explain to me how it's obstruction of justice.
It's very similar to 1972 in the same Oval Office where...
It is not at all similar to 1972.
The president said there is a pending investigation of his...
Nope.
It should be prosecuted and investigated.
Here's the professor in me coming out.
Okay.
There are two sets of statutes under the U.S. Code, under Title 18. They deal with obstruction of pending proceedings and obstruction of investigations.
Correct.
There's only one obstruction of investigation statute that would be arguably applicable. That's Section 1510 of Title 18 of USC. That basically requires that there be an act of bribery that prevents a communication to a criminal investigator about a crime. You would agree that neither one of those elements have been satisfied?
Correct.
Okay. So then we move on to pending proceedings, obstruction of justice statutes.
That's the relevant one.
That's correct. There's 1510 and there's 1512. Both have pending proceedings language in them. Pending proceedings is a legal term of art.
A legal term of art is a word or phrase that has special meaning in a particular context. A legal work of art is Elizabeth Foley.
It's defined in Section 1515.
Right.
And a pending proceeding is a judicial or quasi-judicial proceeding.
Quasi-judicial.
In which, for example, quasi-judicial would be an administrative agency that has subpoena power, enforcement power. The FBI does not have subpoena power, so it does not qualify. Every single court that has been asked the question, does an FBI investigation constitute a pending proceeding under the obstruction statutes, has answered the question no, including the Ninth Circuit, the most liberal court in the country, in 2013.
Correct. And there was a grand jury proceeding in the Eastern District of Virginia investigating Kelly at this moment.
Yes.
So there's your answer.
Let me bring in some other folks just for a second here.
As evidenced by the ominous shaking of her Michelangelo wouldn't carve it because it was already perfect head, sexiest woman alive Elizabeth Foley, who is the sexiest woman alive, is again prepared to refute and debunk the philandering panderer known as adulterer Jeffrey Toobin. But of course CNN wouldn't be CNN if it didn't cut off anyone making a point contrary to their Candyland fantasy for liberals mentally aged 2 to 6, meaning all liberals everywhere and forever. So with that, we'll make like Mike Pence and time travel back one more time for a second helping of the hot liquid chocolate words of sexiest woman alive Elizabeth Foley, who is the sexiest woman alive.
Every single court that has been asked the question, does an FBI investigation constitute a pending proceeding under the obstruction statutes, has answered the question no, including the Ninth Circuit, the most liberal court in the country, in 2013.